His understanding of life was underpinned with the notion that human action, all of it, is motivated purely by an aversion to pain.
I am addicted to misery, man. You suggest that creating my own meaning out of my own situation is an antithesis to this crushing feeling of the void. I'm staring into the abyss, as Nietzsche would say.
What year is this? Who's the Prime Minister? I don't know what's happened to my accent. Hello and welcome. Do you remember this little show we done? Do you?
Do I
Does
remember
anyone? I don't know. It's the Distance Trap. And, we're back out of nowhere like nothing has ever happened and discussing some topical, controversial and challenging subject matters that are designed to induce some cognitive dissonance in you. And you're listening to me, Josh.
And you're also listening to me, Gav. We're back after several months of hibernation to discuss, some dissonance-inducing paranoid topics.
Schizophrenic. Where have you? So, Gav, I think we're all wondering, where have you been and what have you been doing? And who have you been seeing?
I haven't been seeing anyone, mate. I've been struggling with coping with the meaning of reality for the past 2 months. And I'm back out of my hibernation now to try and discuss with the wider world what it means to live in a late stage capitalist society. I mean, I don't think it means anything to live in a late stage capitalist society. I know you're going to probably disagree with me, but I don't think we have any meaning at all in our lives currently.
Interesting. So you don't think we have any meaning in our lives?
Not really. I mean, it's kind of it's designed like this, isn't it, in society? So I think we should probably start by explaining the difference between two types of liberty, because I find that really helpful, the positive and negative liberty, because I don't know how much you know about these two concepts. I'll try and keep it brief.
Go on. You educate us all.
These ideas, positive liberty and negative liberty, have been espoused by the philosopher Isaiah Berlin, and he basically used them to describe two different types of government, really, or two different ways of organizing your society. So in positive liberty, I'll use an example: positive liberty society, Soviet Union, and French Revolutionary Society. These are the extreme examples, obviously. In a society run by positive liberty, decisions are taken which override and overrule people's ideas of self to some degree. So if it's good for the nation, then it's good for everyone. And the decisions are made, judges make decisions on laws and stuff based on this idea that it's possible to create a society that works for everyone and that has a kind of direction, like a goal almost for society to aim for. So in obviously the Soviet Union, it was, apparently it was
5-year plans.
Yeah, but it's also the egalitarian system of collective farming, and that if everyone worked together, then everyone would be happy. And with the French Revolution, it was kind of almost like to do away with the old monarchy and to get rid of them all, and to unite the workers of the world, although obviously that's before Marxism, so we're not quite there yet. But it's kind of a pre-Marxist ideology, isn't it? The French Revolution, it's definitely, it's definitely along those lines. So yeah, that's positive liberty, or at least there's a very vague description of positive liberty. You could probably find a better one if you searched hard enough. I mean, probably I could find a better one if I searched hard enough. In fact, I'm going to quickly look up. So while I look for that, we'll talk about negative liberty, and we all live in a negative liberty society now. So negative liberty is basically the opposite of positive liberty, and it's freedom for the individual at the cost, I think, to the direction of society. So in a negative liberty society, like in the West, we don't have direction. We're just told that you exist and you can buy stuff and you can live your life however you want within reason. Within the laws of the society, but the laws are pretty liberal in the West, aren't they? There's not much we can't do.
I don't know about this. I don't think we don't have messages all over the place attempting to give us meaning. I see we get meanings from trying and forced on us by the government.
Do you think so?
Definitely, yeah. Look, you're told exactly what vaccines you need. You're told what illness is. You're giving an education. You have religion trying to encroach in different ways. There's lots of different messages out there. And I think this idea that there is no meaning in life, pretty absurd. Don't you think that saying that there is no meaning in life is itself giving yourself a meaning that there is no meaning?
No, I'd say that's semantics, man. You're trying to argue via semantics there that there isn't like, or you're trying to support your argument there with a description of technicality. I mean, look at this, man.
But debunk that. How are you not having a meaning by saying you don't have a meaning when your meaning is to not have one?
Let's go back a second because we're jumping forward loads here. I wanted to just chat. So basically, I've found the things I needed now. So the actual definition of negative liberty, is a system that creates laws that exclude the state from interfering in the private lives of its citizenry. Yeah. Now, I will agree with you that lately, late-stage capitalist systems have begun to move away from this idea. Yeah. But this is important because you're talking about the way that they're introducing meaning back to our lives, and I think that's important because
they always have. Perhaps, I think it. I always think
governments have lost during the later period of the Cold War, and after the collapse of the Soviet Union, we really did lose this idea of meaning in society, because Francis Fukuyama himself said that history had ended. Like, this is the end of history. He said that social democracy was the system that was going to survive from now to forever, and that we didn't need to have any more grand ideas about society, and then we're all just going to live in this happy advertisement-filled utopia. And it is bollocks, because we need meaning in our lives, man, to cement society. And this is what Isaiah Berlin said. You need some sort of grand idea to unite people, and we used to have that, man. We had religion was the standard one, wasn't it? For thousands of years, religion was what united society.
Do you want the state to mandate a meaning in your life?
No, but you're saying that the state is already doing that, and it's choosing carefully what it uses now, and it's choosing these things because they understand, those in the top tier of the society, they understand that we're the glue that holds social systems together has fallen apart because of negative liberty.
Well, that's a really, because there's still law and order, isn't there? There's still...
Well, is there, though? Because think about what happened during last year, we were about halfway through what was like the big surge and the panic of the pandemic year. We were about halfway through, and there was a heat wave, wasn't there? Do you remember, was it last year in 2020? I mean, there was a heat wave this year because the climate's collapsing, but that's a topic for another discussion. But last year, there was a big heat wave, and people just went nuts. They'd been living in these quarantine conditions, which weren't even that bad, realistically, for what, 3 or 4 months. Yeah, people had to stay inside. It wasn't like we had nothing to do. We had internet, we had Zoom calls, like we had whatever. Yeah, it's impossible to get bored in Western society with all these toys that we have. Yeah, and yet people went crazy, and they came out. There's somewhere in the south of England, I read last year, there was basically the council had to declare a state of emergency because literally hundreds of thousands of people had just gone to the beach. They were fighting amongst themselves. They were fucking littering everywhere. They were shitting on like the roadside. I mean, you look at all these, these reports. Look at these festivals. Yeah, Reading Festival. Look at all the trash that people leave behind. The people get knifed. People get robbed. Well, this is what I'm saying, is that without this meaning, without this almost this fear of like burning in hell. I mean, I'm not a religious person at all, but there is something to be said about the old medieval societies that had that.
I see we going. No, this is going back to Nietzsche again, isn't it? Of God is dead, and lamenting. Yeah. So I get that in a way, but I think all these stories and the stuff we hear, these are, for the most part, if you drive down a country road, it's quite clean. You only ever hear about the terrible stuff that news is going to sell, and it like Leeds. Not everyone is actually like that. I'd say there's more order than disorder, because if there was more disorder, there would be revolution.
Well, there is currently, but I think the scales are tipping, man. And this is why the government is, especially in the UK, is becoming more and more like it's gerrymandering towards this authoritarian position, because obviously they can see the climate's collapsing. That's obvious. It's obvious there's not going to be enough food in like 50 years. So a cretin could tell you that, because the crops are all going to die. So that's one reason why they're starting to turn the screw in terms of like what the new laws are introducing and so on. And this is why they're trying to get us to all work together. But this is where the dissonance comes in, because the way that our world is constructed and the way that the ideology of government works is that we have to live in a negative liberty society where everyone has their freedoms. And I think this is where these two ideas crash into each other in the late stage capitalist society, because you can't work together and have a society based on individual freedoms. It just doesn't work. And it's not working, because I see this day in, day out. I see this slow decline in law and order. Like say masks, for example. Yeah, like it should be pretty simple. Yeah, if the government says, if we could believe the government to start off with, yeah, that'd be a good thing. But let's say we do, yeah. Let's just take that as a given before we
You
go
do
into
some of what they say, though, don't you?
yeah. So let's just assume that the scientists and the government, they got some idea of what they're talking about. Yeah. So they say, oh, you need to wear masks because it helps reduce the spread. Yeah. Now that's a simple thing. It's not that people don't choke on masks. People that say they can't breathe are talking rubbish. Yeah. It's just a piece of cloth that prevents some of the dangerous and harmful little droplets going into your lungs here. That's all it is. It's not going to stop you catching COVID at all. It's just a mild bit of protection. That's how it was advertised. Yeah. And yet, people for the last year and a half, from my experience working in customer service, they're so angry that their individual freedoms are being infringed. Yeah. And yet, at the same time, they are despairing about the state of the world and the fact that Granny Weatherwax or whatever can't get any care and there's no money in the system. And this is what I mean. It's these two conflicting ideas that they hold in their head. The idea that they are individually,
sovereign,
they are individually allowed to basically to live how they want, but at the same time that they want the pandemic to disappear and they want people to work together. They can't. These two ideas don't coalesce, and this is what I'm seeing. And you're talking about stuff like, oh, there's no litter. I disagree, man. As I've got older,
I didn't say there's no litter. I didn't say there's no litter.
But as an example, yeah, we'll use this as an example. There is far more shit on the corners of streets than there were when I was a kid. Yeah, there is far more like piles of fly tipping is way more common. Yeah, I see people who are continuously drunk or on ketamine on regular basis. Yeah, I see like people who, because there's no social care system, because it's all been privatized or it's being privatized and there's no staff in the system anymore, then yeah, there's people are basically certain areas of the town that I live in have become almost lawless. Like you don't hang around in some of the areas because you're going to get accosted by someone who.
It's always been like that in rough areas, though, isn't it? I grew up on a council estate, and it's no different there. If you're there, if you walk around at 2 a.m. in the morning, you're going to get trouble.
I'm not talking about 2 a.m. in the morning, in psychology, I'm talking about like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Like, and
in a way, like spice, the spice sort of, drugs, maybe a bit more. I don't know, because I think we've got to be careful of this. And I'm not saying you're wrong, but in social psychology, they talk about this imagined past when you get these old biddies going, oh, in my day, it used to be such and such. And it normally is like bollocks. Do you not
think there was more meaning in the past, though? Like life had a meaning, especially during the Cold War, man. Like, because the enemy was Russia, wasn't it? That was our.
This is so arbitrary. It's so Soviet Union. It's so subjective. And the reason why I asked you about, you're saying life has no meaning, and actually that we sort of have, I think there is meaning, and like saying we don't have meaning is actually giving your life meaning by saying there isn't. I know that sounds, I can't explain. I know I'm not trying to bamboozle here, but I find this really interesting because we're talking about something that's very big, but if we take it down to the micro a minute, we can come back to it.
Yeah.
But if we're going to go to Adler a minute.
Okay.
And so he goes down the line of, if we're struggling to find meaning in life, and don't worry, this comes into what you're talking about here, then that means we're striving for like this personal superiority. And this is because we're choosing to see the world as winners or losers. And I see sort of where you're going, like there's a element of this between negative liberty and positive liberty here. Whereas, like, I think you're saying, like, it's in our best interest to try and work together better and have a goal, a group goal. Now, the distinction that Adler gives here is that if you are striving for personal superiority, which is more individually based, this sort of makes you start to hate everyone because you're trying to compete and outperform others.
But isn't that negative liberty in a nutshell then? Because that's what we've been told to do for years. Like you grow up with this competitive attitude.
Yeah, you're right. Capitalism. And that's why I'm relating it in.
So you're agreeing with me there, aren't you? The negative liberty, the world without meaning, is turning us against each other.
Well, I think that's the thing. This is very much about an individual responsibility where we're starting with ourselves. It's Adler. We know it's quite tricky to go, but he's looking at it by the individual. If you've got a group of 10 people, well, they're all going to be thinking different things. So you can only try and say to them, look, it's best to go for overall success rather than personal superiority.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that ties in with Isaiah Berlin's idea of the goal for society, doesn't it? So
if I sort of said, the other day, we're comparing our beginnings to other people's middles and we can get jealous. So the opposite to negative liberty, the antidote Adler gave us, is this striving for success rather than striving for personal superiority. Striving for success individually or as a group, that gives us that external focus other than ourselves. And it's not about us per se, because when it is, we become bitter and competitive, which is striving for personal superiority. But striving for success makes us look outward and to find meaning in life beyond our own ego. So there must be goals beyond ourselves to see others not as competitors, but as, like people to work with.
Yeah.
So I'd say that ties in with these ideas of negative and positive liberty.
I think you've subtly agreed with me there. That just translates as negative liberty society doesn't function, essentially. That's what I get from that, is that you cannot have a working society that only encourages people for that personal, what did you call it? Was it personal success or
personal superiority? So personal superiority, like if you're saying life has no meaning, then that's because you're striving for personal superiority. You're not striving for
See, I think that's what I mean. The society we've constructed for ourselves deliberately make sure that people don't have a meaning in order to force people to strive for this personal superiority.
But it doesn't.
Ideologically speaking, it does. Look at Thatcher. Matt, I can give you loads of examples.
Yeah, but you're talking about lots of people. You're talking about millions of people. The individual can decide whether they have meaning or not. That's not for you to decide.
No, I don't think so, because we are conditioned from birth. Yeah, we are all born.
I'm not
late stage capitalist society. Yeah, but you've broken your conditioning, man. So
so then can other people break their conditioning?
Of course they can.
Well, there we go.
The baseline for our society is a meaningless void, man. Like and it's filled with
if you want it to be.
No.
It's
not if you want it to be, man. It's not if you choose it to be, because we are innately programmed from birth. Yeah. So look at
how do I disagree with you?
Give you a few examples. Yeah. So Thatcher. Yeah, one of Thatcher's favourite sayings, Margaret Thatcher, former British Prime Minister, if any of you are listening don't know who are waffling on about. Yeah, Margaret Thatcher, the Conservative Prime Minister in the 80s and 90s, she said that you must consider yourself a failure if you're still using the bus after the age of 30. Yeah, now that basically, we deconstruct that sentence. Yeah, you are a failure if you do not personally earn enough money to drive a polluting car along British roads. You're a failure if you have to use a public service for the ease of others.
According to Margaret Thatcher, yeah.
But
you can either
she was the leader of our country, man, and our whole idea, the Conservative Party that's been in power for 10 years, New Labour that were in power for 10 years, they all base their whole worldview on these ideas that are based on the ideas of objectivism from Ayn Rand, or a particular interpretation of Ayn Rand's objectivism, which we've hammered loads on this podcast before, man. So this is why I'm saying that it doesn't matter that if you think that we can break our conditioning, because you're right, man, because not everyone feels that their life doesn't have a meaning. But I'm saying that the vast majority of people probably do. Because in fact, no, if you're listening to this podcast now, get in touch, man. Do you feel that your life has meaning? If you do, I want to hear from you. If you don't, I want to hear from you.
But I'm saying that if you do think that what Margaret Thatcher says should define how you live, then you are striving for personal superiority according to late stage capitalism, to become inferior, to not be the person riding on the bus, rather than ignoring the Adlerian call to strive for success, which asks us to take responsibility and not rely on sort of what people say to define who we are. Because if we do that, then we are going to fail, aren't we? If I open a book about Chairman Mao here now and read the first thing, and it said, that how we should go about and conduct pillaging and the murdering of people we disagree with. Well, do I just take that on and go, well, that's society? I think we got to rise above that. And just quickly going back to Adler a minute, it's not that any issue is necessarily about the group. He said all issues are interpersonal ones. And he stripped it down. He said, if it was only
all issues are interpersonal.
Yeah, so all issues. Yeah, exactly. Well, he said, and the reason this is because if you existed in isolation on your own, then you wouldn't have any interpersonal worries, because it'd just be you. You wouldn't have to worry about what so-and-so thinks. What Margaret Thatcher said.
That's an interesting thought experiment, isn't it? Like, who would teach you to read? Who would teach you to think? You wouldn't be able to speak if you just lived on your own.
Well, but you wouldn't worry what Margaret Thatcher said. You wouldn't say, well, I'm going to be depressed because Margaret Thatcher said I'm a dunce for riding a bus, But we can all, if we're striving for success, then we can overlook these things. And the reason I was going to Nietzsche is that Nietzsche didn't want us to be depressed.
That's true, isn't it? Yeah, people read him wrong, don't they? And the problem with Nietzsche is he got picked up by the Nazis, and then he's just been tarnished. And he would have been horrified, I think, at the use of the Will to Power, which he never even wanted to get published, did he? Like, the Will to Power was not even a finished work.
Well, the The will to power, Villa's Macht, is taken completely out of context.
Yeah, it is. It is, isn't it? Yeah, but I mean, there is some stuff from Nietzsche though that does kind of support my idea that we are living in this purposeless, meaningless world. Though,
I'd love to hear it because I don't think there is.
This comes from Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Yeah. From what I gleaned from it, I struggle with the interpretation a little bit, I think, but I've watched some documentaries on it recently that are trying to sort of cut through. And of course, it's whoever that presents the documentary, it's their own interpretation. But from what I got with this is that basically, like, Nietzsche kind of recognized that in the heavily industrialized post-Christian world of the societies of tomorrow, there would be this vacuum of social cohesion. This is what the God is dead thing comes from, isn't it? Because without Christian values, how are we supposed to live our lives? And I kind of don't agree with the Christian values to some degree, but I can see where he's coming from. And it makes sense to me. And he said that all that remained would be the empty values of the herd. And he believed that those living in Western society were becoming what he termed, were becoming the last men. Yeah. And then the last men are human beings who have turned their backs on the challenges of life. They live a banal existence. Their concerns are the trivial and the narcissistic. He thought they were buying into the religion of comfortableness, which is a worldview that shuns higher values and celebrates the mundane. Now, that really cuts. I mean, you might disagree with my sort of summary of that, what I got from it. And I think that literally describes it cut through me when I first read this. This is like lifted from someone else's summary, essentially. This little sentence here, yeah. So the last men, yeah, we are the human beings who've turned their backs on challenges, living a banal existence. Their concerns are trivial and narcissistic. That literally describes many people I interact with on a daily basis. Yeah, people I have to deal with at work, and sort of associates, etc. And I'm not saying that I don't despise them, I don't hate them, anything like that. But I can see that their concerns are not the same as mine. Their concerns are about Love Island and about Coronation Street and about what pub they're going to go to tonight. So they're literally meaningless, trivial bollocks
to you, meaningless to you, yeah.
But it is trivial to all of us because it's not gonna.
Well, it's not to some people. You can't define other people's.
No, I think I can, man, because there's.
You're the only person in the world who can.
Yeah, but without their lives, they must.
You're not allowed to define other people's meaning.
Why not?
Only they can do that.
Why
because,
not?
Because then you're a tyrant. You know, you're not.
Well, we've already discussed that. I'm probably a little bit inclined.
But so the first bit,
ideas anyway.
Yeah, you're right. In Thus Spoke, that is where he's going. He's on about the Villas of Macht. However, like, it seems like they might have missed a part.
Okay.
The whole point in, well, the religion of comfortableness is more in the gay science, but we'll just keep the Thus Spoke in it.
All right.
The main point is that this will can be bigger than the will to survive at times. But let's talk about the last men and like nihilism. But for Nietzsche, it's this sort of end time you're talking about, the last men, the narcissistic state of society. It's a transitory state. It's not his final antidote, which is for the last men to become Übermensch, or to self-master, self-cultivate our own paths, not just to wallow in pity. Nietzsche wanted us to realize that suffering is a tool that should be used to become better. And to use this tool wrongly can be like a disaster, which could be what we're looking at in terms of negative liberty and people who are depressed, etc. They're using the tool incorrectly. I don't know the entire quote, but he's saying, like, behold, I teach you the overman. This is the meaning of the earth.
Don't they chase Zarathustra out of the town though?
But that is it. That's the victory. That's the antidote. The Übermensch.
What? How is that a victory though? Like, because the narcissistic last men, they don't listen to Zarathustra. They chase him away and they don't listen to him. So
yeah, but he still goes on to talk about Übermensch after that. He gives us the antidote to the men chasing Zarathustra out.
We're going back to the billionaire space race argument now, because to me, what you've just said there says that the billionaire space race is fine because those are the people that are the Übermensch, yeah, and they're striking away from the constraints of the depressing negative liberty world, and they're doing whatever the hell they want. But it's not for the public good, though, is it? This is where we.
Well, I don't think it is where we disagree, because Nietzsche never defined that an Übermensch should be someone who's callous and unkind. In fact, he specifically noted that an Übermensch should always be kind and to those who are weaker than themselves.
Okay, I didn't get that from it, but I skipped through. I have, like I said, I haven't fully read and understood. I don't think that
Well,
spoke
what,
Zarathustra. I've understood the bits I've chosen to understand, I guess.
I can find the actual verse where he
No,
says
no,
that.
I just think that our interpretations of it are different. The way I've read it is slightly different. We've kind of got the same message to some degree, but I think maybe with the way that we're applying it to reality is different.
Well, you're saying that the last men is like the final call of what Nietzsche wanted to convey.
No, no. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that he wanted us to be, but I'm saying that he predicted that this is where society would ultimately end. Is if we abandoned our ideas of social cohesion, i.e., Christianity.
Do you not see that it sort of makes sense that you have the end times, or represented by the last men, and that his antidote is the Übermensch, which tells us to take responsibility and to self-cultivate and to self-define ourselves to be successful?
I mean, if by that he meant that we should, a few intelligent people should work together to try and dig our way out of this hole, then yes.
Well, he wasn't prescriptive with it. I think he was sort of deliberately vague a lot of the time. But there's no reason to say why not. I think overall, what we can see is that it's easy for people to take Nietzsche incorrectly and sort of make of them what they will. But his actual overall message was quite positive. And going slightly back to like the religion of comfortableness, which I agree we're sort of in that place. We're adverse to pain, and the government recognize that as well. He wrote about the need to worship suffering, but it's often confused as a reason to be defeatist, partially due to the esoteric nature of his writings, which I think is where we might be clashing.
Okay.
What he's saying. But this religion of comfortableness that he wrote about, it was a critique of like Epicurean pleasure. The idea that hedonism is the best thing in life.
Where does this leave us in terms of meaning?
Well, for me, it's about our lifestyle and what we choose to define as meaning. And I said to you earlier, like, if you're saying that there is no meaning, well, that is a meaning to live life as if there's no meaning. You can't escape it. It's an inescapable trap.
Personally, I can't give myself a meaning because I know it's a false meaning. If I were to arbitrarily give myself a meaning in life, let's say I chose to save all the donkeys, it's an absurd thing, but some people have done that. They've chosen to save donkeys as the meaning, the raison d'etre for their life. What I'm saying is that that's an artificially constructed meaning. It's not something that is real, is it? It's something you've decided to commit your life to. It's the same like with any other random thing in the late stage capitalist society we decide to devote our lives to. It's not something which is going to enable our species to survive to adulthood, essentially, as an intelligent species, man. This is what it comes back to for me. Perhaps this is my meaning, ultimately, that I don't realize I have sometimes, is that I've become obsessed with this idea of the longevity of our species, man, and how we've slit our own throats with the way that we live now. I mean, I've just been reading some Adorno on the sly whilst you've been chatting, man, and listen to this.
We like Adorno here, don't we?
We do like Adorno. So this is what Theodore Adorno said when he referenced the fad of jazz music, and this is something I'm pretty sure you sent. And he said, in general, they, and by they he means young people in the 30s, are intoxicated by the fame of mass culture, a fame which the latter, those people, knows how to manipulate. They could just as well get together in clubs for worshipping film stars or for collecting autographs. What is important to them is the sense of belonging as such, identification without paying particular attention to its content. As girls, they have trained themselves to faint upon hearing the voice of a crooner. Their applause, cued in by a light signal, is transmitted directly onto the popular radio programs they are permitted to attend. They call themselves jitterbugs, bugs which carry out reflexive movements, performers of their own ecstasy, merely to be carried away by anything at all, to have something of their own, to compensate for their impoverished and barren existence. The gesture of adolescence which raves for this or that one day, with the ever-present possibility of damning its idiocy on the next, is now socialized. Now, I'm not quite sure I understand the last sentence of that, but the rest of that compensating for their own impoverished and barren existence, man. Again, it's like these thinkers from 50, 100, 200 years ago. It's like they could see the path of our descent into negative liberty laid out before us, man. And this is why I'm saying that this is all these people that I've read, they're supporting my understanding of the world, that we do live in this barren and impoverished existence. It's a deliberate construct by our leaders in order to make sure we don't question the insane cognitive dissonance filled decisions that they make every day to line their own pockets.
Adorno did say that everything is created to stop us thinking about the real issues in life. Look at advertising. So going back to that group of people he's describing, so people who struggle to find meaning, whether they like it or not, they're striving for a personal superiority, and that's why they're competing. That's why they feel this dissonance. This is why they feel this conflict. Those people he's describing, while they are in groups of people, they are solely looking for personal superiority, to transcend it, to be part of this group. They want to be popular than someone else. Their goals are all personal ones, attributed to that lifestyle. So people who don't have a lot of meaning, they will look for it and tend to do it in the pursuit of superiority. Again, the Adlerian antidote to that is the individual striving for success. It's to sort of choose to not go down that same path as them, and to look at the bigger, wider issues like the collapse of the biosphere, and collectively try to work towards something as a group rather than competing individually against someone else, which is just going to make you very upset. You saying you've got no meaning, well, you can only be in one of those camps, striving for success or striving for superiority. If you're saying you've got no meaning, people who say that are typically down, don't see themselves as having meaning on either, because they're comparing themselves to others, they're competing in late stage capitalism, whereas actually you can transcend that if you take the Adlerian route of the striving for success. It's the easy way out of it.
Well, you say it's an easy way out of it, but it requires
not easy,
breaking your conditioning from decades of indoctrination, essentially. And this is the point I'm trying to make, is that I've been struggling with this for probably 10 years now. So I would class myself as one of these jitterbugs up until about the age of 25, when it all suddenly hit me that I was a sack of meat powered by electricity, and that's all I was, essentially. Is I don't have a wider meaning in society. And I can appreciate that you and Adler are both in agreement that you suggest that creating my own meaning out of my own situation is an antithesis to this crushing feeling of the void. I'm staring into the abyss, as Nietzsche would say. But I don't think it's that easy. And it's certainly not that easy for most of the people that I interact with on a daily basis who also struggle with this existential dread, man, because they're not helped by our systems and our social structures.
Do you want to be an Ubermensch? If you want to transcend that, you can help yourself.
I would like to be an Ubermensch. I mean, I don't particularly want to be an SS like Unterscharführer, but I'd quite like to be an Ubermensch as Nietzsche originally suggested in like the 50s or whatever.
I mean, I'm not trying to be some kind of like pop psychologist here, but if you
that's all you're trying to be.
You've uncoupled my pursuit for superiority under the guise of striving for success. No, but seriously, like, he was controversial firstly because he denied the existence of trauma, which we know is kind of scientifically rubbish, because you can see trauma and its effects on the brain. But for example, you chose to engage with this podcast today. And if you can choose to do that, then you can choose how to direct your life in other ways. I do it all the time. When I was working out at the office, people would come in, they say, what do I need to do X, Y, and Z? And if I wasn't using like a coaching method, I didn't have time, I'd say, right, go out that door and turn right. And often they go out the door and turn left. Now, you could argue all you like that is conditioning, but there's also a choice to it. They could quite easily choose to go right, unless you're telling me that they don't have control of their legs. So we can say all we like, oh, Thatcher said in 1986 that I'm a piece of shit for riding the bus, and I'm going to use that as a way of never stepping up and use it as a way of avoiding inferiority. And we can remain like the last men if we want and be that. Or we can transcend it and start to redefining ourselves and self-cultivating our resilience to become Ubermensch.
Well, I think that's really interesting, man. I've been listening quite intently to that, and I think if any of our listeners are struggling with depression or whatever, I think you should pause it here and just rewind it a bit and listen to that again, man, because that's actually really helpful, because you do have a choice, don't you, about whether or not you engage, and you do have a choice about your own level of involvement in meaning, I guess. But I mean, it
is hard, Gav. I know it's hard,
not convinced. I'm still not convinced as a society that we're at the point where people can do that. I mean, perhaps
individuals
as a mildly intelligent individual, perhaps I could eventually convince myself to do that. But I'd still like to sort of kick back to the wider picture that isn't how our lives are constructed. It isn't how our societies are constructed, is it? I mean, look at what Chomsky said about the framing of the debate, didn't he? I can't remember. I'd have to paraphrase slightly, but he said that the best way, the way that tyrants and governments control people is to make sure that the framing of the Overton window is kept as narrow as possible. So in this instance, you look at the types of meaning that we get in society now, like the LGBT sort of movement. That's a big thing in a lot of people's lives now, isn't it? And it's a false construct. It's something that we're told that is important, when in reality, is it particularly important? Like, surely people's sexuality is a private thing amongst themselves. So why is it something that is constantly pushed forward as something in the media and something in the news?
Well,
and
that's liberalism, isn't it?
This also goes back to the differences between positive and negative liberty, because what I found through my studies in the last decade is that our society, our negative liberty society, which on paper should be obsessed with a government not interfering in the existence of its citizens, we find quite the opposite, don't we? Because during the war on terror, they used the 9/11 attacks, which are the anniversary, which is what, in 5 days, something like that now. They used those attacks to force citizens of other nations into a negative liberty lifestyle. So all these citizens, I mean, this is actually a really present topic at the moment, isn't it? Because look at Afghanistan.
Taliban
tried to export a negative liberty, liberal democracy by force using the methods of positive liberty. So, I mean, the dissonance there is mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
I will force you to be free, motherfucker. It's the same as Robespierre from French Revolution, man. We must force them to be free. Yeah. So we've got this whole confused and convoluted idea about why we went to war. And we spent trillions of taxpayer dollars and pounds. Thousands of people were killed, hundreds of thousands of civilians in these countries are blown to pieces. And in the end, it turns out that most of the people in Afghanistan, they don't even want a negative liberty democracy. They're quite happy with their conservative religious society. Now, I'm not saying that all the people in Afghanistan, of course, like hundreds of thousands of them tried to flee. Women are terrified, but gay people are terrified, understandably so. And I do feel a lot of empathy for those who are stuck in this country that don't want to be living under the Taliban rule. But the speed of which the country has collapsed, it just shows how hollow these ideas of a liberal democracy are, man.
The majority of people don't want.
It offered them nothing.
Democracy.
Yeah, but it offered them nothing, did it?
Well, apart from wedding dresses and liberalism. They don't want that.
McDonald's. It offered them fucking McDonald's. Like, it didn't offer them an economy that worked. It didn't offer them an education. It didn't offer them a grand vision for society. It offered them a double mac and cheese for 10 dinars or whatever or Afghanis, whatever the fucking currency is.
Well, I don't know. I think it did offer like the sort of things around education. More women were going to university.
I've been ridiculously macro,
I think you're more right to sort of going down the route to say that is not what the majority of people in Afghanistan want, because they do follow a conservative religion. And who the hell are we to tell them not to?
Yeah, I think that's important, isn't it? Because it takes time. It's taken us as a Western society about 2,000, maybe 3,000 years to essentially get over Christianity, as far as I'm concerned. And even in doing so, we've propelled ourselves into the void of nothingness. I mean, I hate to say it, but maybe we should go back to a less division of religion and stuff. I don't know, man. Yeah,
I'm going to saint you. I'm going to write now to the Pope.
Conclusion for me to reach in the space of an hour. But yeah, maybe
Saint Gavin Rees.
Yeah, maybe I should be knighted, sainted, whatever we call it.
The saint of nihilism. And, I think we're on the same lines with that one. Just bring it back a minute to Nietzsche.
Okay.
And it's all related, really, because his understanding of life was underpinned with the notion that human action, all of it, is motivated purely by an aversion to pain. And that's why you do get people who don't want to make big leaps in their life to change something about their lifestyle so that they can see the world in a brighter way. You know, that's sort of what cognitive behavioral therapy does. So it's quite a challenging thing. And this is true in general terms, but Nietzsche also taught us to embrace pain more sensibly. And that's why I said about it's important to use it as a tool. You know, he wants us to use asceticism as a means of self-improvement and a way of feeling the will to power, the Wille zur Macht. I think, again, he gets confused. People go, oh, he doesn't like asceticism at all. Well, I think he sort of embraced it a little bit in terms of like the religious asceticism we see in terms of like giving up alcohol, abstaining from sex, you know, those sort of things. but he thinks we should use them for ways to improve ourselves temporarily, and that we shouldn't be entirely devoid of like reward.
Yeah,
So
no, of course we mustn't be completely.
No, you got to be nice to yourself. I mean, I'm not. I think we both disagree with this sort of westernized notion of pap of you should love yourself. Love yourself first. It's like it's so cringy to me. I don't think it's helpful at all, and that is more about pursuit of superiority rather than striving for success. Again, if it's better. I think we both agree here for people to come together to strive for a mutually beneficial goal, whether that be tackling climate change, rather than the pursuit of superiority, the individual who's trying to one up his estate agent colleague to sell more houses.
Do you not think, though, that what you've just said kind of supports the idea that we need a grand meaning for our society? Like, so we need a direction. Yeah, and I always come back to,
but who gives
space
it
exploration? Well,
who's going to give it to you? That's my question. That's my problem. If it's the state, then you can fuck off.
What if it's a good idea, though? I mean, what if it's something that we can all agree on? I come back to the space race. I love coming back to the space race because I think that was that period of time was really where we should have abandoned liberal democracy, and we should have a kind of a technocratic dictatorship almost that almost didn't force us to pursue space exploration, but that's what I feel is that if we're going to have a goal, the goal has to be something that's going to help everyone, isn't it? And the meaning of our transient lives, should be the longevity of our species. And I know it's a very ludicrously all-encompassing idea, but there's so much you can fit into that. I can see where you're coming from, that you should, as a person, it should be possible for you to construct your own meaning and to be content with that. But I don't think I'm ever going to be able to be content with something that I've come up inside my own head and just go along with it. I suppose that's what any idea is ultimately, but I kind of want...
You've got it though there, Gav. That's the thing. I was going to say that I think meaning has to be self-determined. You're right to say as well, what if the government gives you a good idea? And I think it much depends on what sort of state it is. But if the government says something like, give up McDonald's for a week, then but I do think it has to be self-determined. So you've actually got your meaning there. You love the space race. You think it's in our best interest to reach the next civilization age and aim for the stars. That is a great meaning to have in your life. However, if you're going to go down the route of striving for success, you can't enforce your meaning on other people. You need to naturally find other people who feel that way. And that's how you find meaning with other people and strive for success rather than superiority, because you're still striving for superiority. If you're saying,
true, isn't it? That's true, isn't it? I'm trying to define my own meaning and strive to force that meaning on.
And that's striving for superiority.
Man. I see. I understand that now. I understand the difference.
Whereas you want to strive for success and naturally find other people who share that same goal with you to then reinforce your meaning.
I do find that very difficult, though, in the context of a late-stage capitalist negative liberty society, because if everyone around me is striving for their own personal superiority, it's very difficult for me choosing not to strive for that, to find people who are willing to co-op. It is hard, man. I find working with others difficult because often, you're waiting for your turn to speak, aren't you? For your ideas to put your ideas forward and to hope that people listen to them, I guess, to get that feeling of, I'm right here and you're not. So,
but you're participating and you're doing this like for right now, like my meaning is being here with you, talking to you and listening to your ideas because I value them. So we do actually have a lot of meaning.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess. But I'm not sure for me, it's not, this isn't like,
but it's not about you, Gav, remember, it's not just
That's true. So that's all right. It's good that it's giving you meaning, having this conversation, but it's not enough for me, man.
It's not just about you, man. Remember, if you're striving for success.
But you said we determine our own meaning. Yeah. So it's always about us in some ways, like, because we live inside our own heads, isn't it? So,
but don't you think
this is very metaphysical now, man? We're going into like fully like crazy, like what are we as individuals now? This is off the beaten track.
Like in the gay science, Nietzsche discussed the topic of like this religion of pity. But again, it's not something you just stay in forever. It's something to overcome. In the same way Dostoevsky wrote that the only way to know happiness is to have suffered. But Nietzsche wants us to transcend these states of dissonance, not to seek suffering, but to accept it as a normal part of a life while we seek.
Yeah, no, I'd agree that you have to accept suffering,
But only as a transitory state. It doesn't have to be forever, unless you want it to be, to avoid inferiority or pursuit of superiority. Schopenhauer, like, he elaborates nicely on that. With, if we got someone else on the show, and they might just say, well, my meaning is Wille zum Leben, like the will to life, to procreate, to continue his line. And it's probably no wonder that, like, fathers no doubt have a small sense of relief from being a father, knowing their line sort of will continue. Although it's like, it's rudimentary, isn't it? And ignoring the complex nature of life and how unpredictable it is. But harmony is the released bow that was held in tension for hours. And then only
that sounds very sexual, man, doesn't it?
But well, it is. You can call it. You can look at it a Freudian way if you like. But that is what harmony is. It's a released bow, and then that bow is then replaced with a new shaft of misery. Until the next release.
Well, I mean, the thing you're saying about fathers there is true, isn't it? I've heard from several people I know who have created a spawn, is that they feel like they could die tomorrow and it wouldn't matter because they've spread their genetic seed.
You said before, fear of death. I think we all have a fear of death, and that's why religious people tend to live long as well. They don't have to. They're not worrying about that, where they go, because they think they know where they're going.
That's quite a sweeping statement that religious people tend to live longer. I wouldn't
but they
say
do. If you look at
really
Christians, there's a higher life expectancy.
Surely that's based on socioeconomic factors, not religious factors. Because if you live in the sub-Saharan desert and you worship God, it doesn't mean you're going to live long, does it? It means you just worship God and you live in a harsh environment.
But if you're worrying less about dying, and then you've got less stress, like a chemical reaction in the brain, then...
Doesn't that mean you would be more likely to do stupid things, though, if you were less worried about your own existence?
Well, some people do, don't they?
I guess.
It is a sweeping statement, but I think if you look into it, you'll find something that correlates that.
We'll put that aside for the population control or something.
So do you think your life has meaning?
No, not at all. No. This is what this whole podcast is about, man. Like when we were just chatting about this the other day, we were chatting about topics for discussion. Like this is why this came up in my mind first of all, because I don't think it has meaning, and I don't think any of our lives have meaning ultimately, because we're not striving towards something as a species.
Some people are.
Well, I don't think they are, because
are they? So people aren't
like
striving
Elon
to go to space.
People like Elon Musk and Richard Branson, they're striving to keep their own class system, the one above ours, the socialism for the rich. That's what they're trying to keep going. They're not trying to keep the human race going, not really. They're trying to make sure that their own obscene way of life survives. If they were striving for the success of a species, they wouldn't be competing with each other for NASA contracts and stuff like this. They'd have created one large monopolized company with really low costs that would tender its equipment out to all nations to use to build a large habitat in space. I mean, that's just off the top of my head, just pulling that forward. That's what I would expect from people who were working towards a grand meaning for society, and those that weren't being pulled by, I keep forgetting this thing, by their pursuit of superiority. They would be guided by their pursuit of collective
striving for success.
Using those two terms that you've coined today, that's what
Adler coined.
That you've introduced to me, those two terms, if we applied them to the billionaire space race, we could see that actually they're just doing it for their own personal achievements, aren't they? Like
they are, but people disguise their efforts. It's a bit like a philanthropist giving £1 million to a charity, and then he's going to get 2 million back from someone else. He's still done something good to start with, surely, like, you can't take it away that Elon Musk has done more than you and me collectively to further our aims of getting to space.
Yes, I mean,
so therefore. Actually, he's done something okay.
He certainly has made some very good personal achievements, and he has technologically they've made some quite significant leaps. But it's still,
you just want everything to be nationalized.
I mean, certain things should be nationalized, and I think that companies that tender
that sounds like a meaning to me.
What the meaning of my life is that companies should be nationalized.
Well, that's your passion, isn't it? That's what you go on about.
I don't know, man. Like I don't want to nationalize everything.
I think you've got meaning, but you don't want to admit it. because it will
No,
reveal.
I don't think I have, man.
So do you think that Nietzsche was wrong? Do you think you're the last man then?
I don't think I'm the last man, but I think our society is heading towards the point where eventually they will all be the last men. Because even if a small group of billionaires survive in bunkers in New Zealand and the Chinese make a habitat that will allow 1,000 people to live in low Earth orbit, the way that we're living currently is so destructive to our environment as a whole, that there won't be, unless we all decide to move away from being the last men in the next decade or so, unless we all reach the conclusion. I mean, this is pure like narcissistic madness now, but until we reach the conclusion that I've reached, that our society doesn't have meaning and we need to give us, I suppose, we need to give ourselves and our society that positive meaning.
You do, mate.
So I do. I definitely agree with
that. So is that your meaning then?
But I can't do it on my own, man. This is what I'm saying is it's not possible for me, just some lunatic ranting on a podcast listened to by half a dozen people. I cannot do it alone. And
you can. I'll do it with you then. We'll have meaning together.
Even 100 of us can't do it. We need everyone to come to this idea at the same time.
That's impossible, mate. Sorry,
but it's not impossible. It's not impossible because
you want everyone in the world to agree with your idea.
or a large percentage, enough people. So look at the way that.
Did you say it's not impossible
what
to
do you
get
mean?
that?
It's not impossible for a large group of people, but I'm saying I do agree that it's not possible for everyone in society in the world to insulate. Of course not. I mean, look at Afghanistan. That proves that we're not all on the same page. But if we're going to survive as a species, then we really need to all start to come to this conclusion. We need to come to it as quickly as possible.
How many people would you be satisfied coming to the same conclusion as you?
100? I'd say like a billion, something like that.
A billion?
We could make trillions.
Why make trillions when we could make billions?
Yeah, 1 billion people, man, because we need a massive. In this, there needs to be a huge.
What about just one person under 1 billion?
What? That's fine. Yeah, all right.
What about 50 people under 1 billion?
All right.
Do you see what I mean?
750 million to 1 billion, somewhere in between those two.
What about
numbers.
700 million?
All right, a lot of people, but
500 million.
We need a lot. We need millions and tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people to begin to understand that negative liberty isn't constructive for our species in the long. Francis Fukuyama said it was the end of history. It's not the end of history. Social democracy isn't the way forward, man. It can't be.
Yeah. The only bit I'm sort of no, you have got meaning, Gavin. You have You're saying maybe I'm being a tyrant now. You have got meaning, Gavin. You can have it. I demand you have meaning, which is kind of nasty of me. But you were saying earlier that you would actually quite like to be Ubermensch rather than the last man. So could that be a good meaning to take on?
I mean, if I could motivate myself to ignore all the last men around me, then I could be the Ubermensch.
Are you powerful enough to transcend that?
I wish I was powerful enough.
You wish?
Be powerful enough.
I wish you should.
I was powerful enough, and I should, but I can't. I can't say I am because.
And who told you you can't be?
For 3 decades, I've been trying.
You've been listening to Margaret Thatcher telling you you're a piece of shit.
I haven't been listening to Margaret Thatcher for 3 decades, but I have been aware that she has been saying things about me.
Oh,
bitch!
Are you? When will you forgive her?
When she spins in a hemp weave death basket.
Well, I think this is all art, you see, and Goethe encouraged us to make our lives works of art. You get people like self-established dandy Sebastian Horsley. You might remember he was sort of our. You remember he crucified himself in 2000?
No, I don't know this. What? He crucified him? What? He hammered the nails in himself?
Yeah. No. Some they did it in the Philippines, and you can watch it on YouTube. Go out and watch it if you want. It's pretty crazy. He's a very interesting character. I don't agree with him entirely.
That's an interesting character.
He did it because he wanted to create his own meaning, and he sort of took Goethe's quote there about us becoming works of art a bit too literally, maybe. He sort of proclaimed that life had no meaning, but at the end of the day, he clearly missed the contradiction in his actions of giving himself no meaning as meaning itself.
I see. I think that's a real
you won't like it.
Technological get. I don't like it, man. You're using words, to literally just a play on words almost to say that. By saying that I have no meaning of giving myself, no, I can't agree with that, man, because you're just saying that I'm giving myself I'm painting a void in front of me, basically.
Yeah, and Adler would agree with that.
There are elements of the art.
Of course, you won't like it. That's dissonance, mate.
It's not right. That's not how the human mind works, man.
I'm afraid it is.
No, because you're removing determinism as a factor in this completely. You're removing my whole upbringing within the late stage capitalist system. You're removing all of my conditioning. You're essentially treating me as if I am like a normal, functional, rational being with no external influences at all. That's how you're spinning this, I think.
I'm not treating you like you haven't been conditioned. I'm just saying that it is possible to choose differently, like you agreed with earlier. And you even said, rewind this if you're struggling a bit. If you want to hold that and put that spoke in your tire for the rest of your life.
But it's conditioning, man. It's not as simple as just not doing it. It's like an addiction, isn't it? I am addicted to misery, man. I've been addicted to misery. Films about the apocalypse and everything. It's all that's on my mind all the time.
But it serves you a purpose.
It doesn't serve me a purpose, man, at all. It's an interest. It's not a purpose, man. It's an interest that I have.
But Adler would disagree. Adler would say it does serve you as a purpose because it means
Adler can fuck off.
Yeah. And you've agreed with it before, putting the spoke in your own tire.
Yeah, I'm just going to put the spoke in my tire right now, man. I'm just going to flip my bike over and pound my face into the dirt.
We can be our own worst enemies. I'm not saying it's not difficult either. There's times when I'm up and down, but I always try and remember Adler and remember if I'm trying to self-sabotage, because we are programmed as well to do that, especially if there's trauma. We are programmed to sort of self-sabotage ourselves. I'm not taking that away from you at all, but ultimately there is a choice associated with it. You can either choose to go and become part of BLM, Gav, and go, woe is me, everyone give me money.
As protests broke out across the US in the name of Black Lives Matter movement, the group's co-founder, Patrisse Cullors, went on a real estate shopping spree, purchasing about 4 or 5 properties worth well over $3 million.
Everyone must agree with me. Or you can go, actually, I'm going to overcome that. I'm going to strive for success collectively. I'm going to become an Ubermensch and self-define and tidy my room.
I have tidied my room recently, to be
fair.
Yeah,
that's good. Well, I don't always tidy my room, but I know before you've come on and you've said stuff like, actually, it really does help. Just doing it
doesn't it? Yeah.
But you are conditioned, mate. I get it. And I am too, to forget those things deliberately. And Freud called it as slip of the tongue syndrome, to deliberately do it because we're not ready. We don't want to face that pain. The emotional pain of striving for success is painful.
I think that's why the striving for superiority, pursuit of superiority. Yeah. I think what you've just said there, that's why I think a lot of people, including myself, within the late stage capitalist paradigm, the zeitgeist, that's why we always return to this idea of superiority, because it feels too much to break away from this idea that you get this idea from everything, man, from perhaps other people don't see it as much as I do, and perhaps I oversee it sometimes, but in every TV advert, in every sound I hear from the world outside, man, is always that knock that says like, oh, you've got to be better than your neighbors, you've got to be better than Derek down the road, his car's better than yours, his fence is painted better than yours, and it's that pervasive and corrosive drip of inferiority that sort of I feel from every corner of the world.
You're hyper vigilant to it, definitely. You're hyper sensitive to that, so you've got a big heightened awareness of it. Basically, what happens when we suffer this kind of pain is that our brain has neural pathways, and we get good, and this is where we get addicted to misery, we get good at recalling pain and trauma. We get so good at it that it becomes so much easier to recall it. So that's why any small thing, you'll see it everywhere, and your brain is so well trained to recall it and think I'm a piece of shit, you'll do it instantly.
Damn you, Margaret Thatcher!
Yeah.
You can't treat the working man this way. One day we'll form a union and get the fair and equitable treatment we deserve. Then we'll go too far and get corrupt and shiftless.
But yeah, you're right. Like, if we go down the route of pursuit of superiority, where we're competing, we are going to start to distrust everyone and hate everyone around us and think the worst of them and think they don't listen to me. If they don't, then they're idiots. Whereas actually, if we're striving for success, then we're going out in the world to try and convince other people to sort of determine their own lives, and that the way you're living is better than the way they are, in a way. You've got to convince people to do that.
Okay.
Well, that's what I think. Do you disagree with what I just said?
I don't know, man. I'm fully dissonanced right now.
Remember, Derrida said aporia should be embraced. Like, if you're feeling that dissonance, Gav, that me and you are definitely used to, I'm used to being wrong as well. So I'm used to going, no, that can't be right. Then that's a positive thing. That can give our lives meaning as well. I don't think you'd be here. If you didn't have a meaning, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be here talking to me. Now, you could take that as you like, mate.
Yeah.
I've
don't
worn
know,
you
man.
down, haven't I?
Yeah, I've run out of arguments now, man. I've reached peak dissonance.
Target, maximum
Dissonance.
firepower.
Ring Francis Fukuyama and
Yeah.
crawl into his pouch and enjoy the end of history. Are we going to do a meme review? I've
Yeah,
got
yeah, man.
memes.
The dissonant meme review.
All right, I've sent you one.
All right. From now on, we'll ban anyone we don't like, and this will help protect democracy. Well, yeah, I think this actually.
Democracy.
Yeah, well, it goes back to sort of Afghanistan, doesn't it? Overall,
It does, man,
let's
yeah.
ban the Taliban. Let's ban thousands of years of Islamic tradition.
Yeah, that's
And,
true, isn't it? We automatically assume that they're inferior, don't we, as in the
Yeah,
West? Like,
pursuit of superiority.
there are some things that, yeah, the Taliban probably get wrong, like not educating women, not allowing women to go outside with without a male guard. I mean, these are stupid concepts.
Yeah.
However, things like the hospitality offered by Muslims to strangers coming into their homes, we don't do that in the West. We tell people to f off if someone asks to use our phone, don't we?
Yeah.
So there are good and bad things, aren't there? Definitely about all cultures, and I think
Definitely.
we need to be a lot more open-minded about cultures. Well, this is the problem we had when we went there in the first place, because we just obviously our soldiers who grew up in this ideological world, who are trained in this ideological world, they go there and they just see bad people, and you see that when they're there, the troops that are there realize very quickly the nuances and the complexities of essentially invading someone else's country. And they try their best, and they do these shifters, don't they? These group meetings of the elders, and they try and work things out. But the problem is they're hamstrung by the ideological nonsense they get from our government.
If we take it back to Adler's sort of pursuit of superiority, what we're looking at is a leader of the Western country in pursuit of superiority, looking to become the guy who can be known as, oh, he's the guy who changed Afghanistan for the better.
Yeah.
I've got one for you, by the way. Do you want to exchange?
Okay.
You've seen this one already.
Thoughts are not facts. Don't believe everything you think. That's interesting, isn't it? That's like burying deep into the psyche of the individual, isn't it? That's telling you to ignore your own mind, I think. Not ignore your own mind, but like maybe question your own thoughts.
Definitely.
Maybe.
Yeah. It's actually from a mental health site. And, that might seem actually quite controversial. Thoughts are not facts.
But it's not controversial, is it, really? It's just telling you
I don't think so.
It's just telling you that sometimes your own paranoia is nonsense, and you need to be aware of that fact.
Yeah, don't believe everything you think.
Yeah, because it's a bit of a harsh way to put it.
If you're thinking, I have no meaning in life, and you think that's a fact, it might be, but it might not be.
I've tried to explain to you why I've had no meaning. It's not simply a random thought, as far as I'm concerned. It is a process via societal determinism.
It's still metaphysical thought, though, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? Yeah, you're ultimately right, other than all the information I provided.
All right, you've sent me one. Let me have
sent me a couple. I've sent you a couple.
Private company. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. The economic.
Yeah. It's stupid, isn't it? Because that's what we see, isn't it? It's literally stupid. Like, where you're not following my Overton window? Where? Like,
their pursuit for superiority. They're not striving for success. Amazon, Disney, Bebo, whatever it's called, Twitter, Apple,
Bebo.
They're all in pursuit of superiority and in competition with each other. And that's like the left and the right, isn't it? They are in pursuit of superiority. Yeah. They're not striving for success. And
this is something we've discussed many times, isn't it? This idea of rational objectivism, where actually we should take the best parts from both sides of the argument and use them to create something progressive.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that the bottom half is private companies can do what they want, and they're annoyed about that as well.
Yeah, because they're annoyed that they're not doing exactly what they want. That's dissonance in operation, isn't it? That is the dissonance.
Oh, I see a spicy meme here. Oh no!
Wow, this last one. This last one is deep, man. I'm pretty sure you sent this to me. Man,
don't try and blame it on me. Yeah.
I'm sure this is from you.
I don't know. Let me. I just saw the first line and I thought, oh no.
Right. It's dark, isn't it, man?
It says, right, the meme says, my best... I'm not laughing at this.
So my best friend killed himself 8 years ago.
My best friend hung himself 8 years ago. Yeah. He never got to see the end Sons of Anarchy. He never got to see the Game of Thrones, which he would have loved. He hasn't heard the song Pillow Talk in my life. Or had a chance to hate Cardi B. He doesn't know about Thanos. I don't know who that is, right? And the Infinity Gauntlet. Don't know what that is.
It's from a film. Yeah.
He missed out on the absolute explosion of memes. My point is, if you kill yourself now, You're missing out on so many things in the future you love. I can't tell you what they are, but there's something that hasn't happened or doesn't exist yet. And those you left behind would connect to you and wish you could experience. That you'd want to experience.
This kind of like meme culture that we see, yeah. Like I know it's obviously the meme underneath it is mocking this post, yeah, but it's all kind of connected, isn't it? Because this is the world that I see, yeah. The world that I see, the people I have to serve, yeah, who I serve in the retail area where I work, yeah, they all look like this, yeah. They've all got these silly nonsense branded hoodies and these stupid Star Wars hats and stuff, and they just come in and they collect stuff. They buy Funko. Their meaning that society has given to them. This is where I would disagree with you, yeah, because they're so devoid of thought, yeah, that their meaning is to collect a byproduct of the petrochemical industry turned into a small head and put in a box, yeah, and they spend 15 quid on each of these fucking things, yeah, and that's their life. That's all they do. They don't understand anything about Adler or Goffman or Heidegger or Nietzsche. They haven't done any reading. Does
that make you angry?
Nothing. It does, man. It infuriates me. And the fact that they're using up all our resources. I'm going off on a proper fascist rant.
Get it out.
I can feel your anger. It gives you focus, makes you stronger.
They use up my fucking oxygen, yeah. No, but in all seriousness, I feel sorry for them though, because I can't imagine what it must be like to wake up and just have this idiotic smile on your face and go, look, I've collected 100 Funko Pops. Aren't I brilliant? Surely.
But you sound like an Ubermensch in comparison to them. You're trying to be kind to what you perceive as people who are weaker than yourself. But also,
I am trying to be kind, but I am also angry, man, because they need to do better. If you collect,
should
Funko
they listen
Pops,
to your worldview then?
Well, they should, because
someone who has no meaning.
Pop? But what is a Funko Pop? Yeah, but at least I know I have no meaning. Yeah, these people don't know they have no meaning. They think they have a meaning because they collect Funko Pops. Yeah, fuck off. That is not a meaning. You're literally filling your life with empty clutter, with empty idols. They're worshipping the fucking golden idol. I'm starting to sound like a religious fundamentalist. The longer I listen to myself, the more I think, you know what, maybe I should convert to
just
Islam.
join a cult.
I'm not a hater of the Muslim faith yet. Maybe I should think about seriously converting.
Well, I mean, look into it. I would, but I was going to say, it's got this meme here saying, he never got to see the end, Sons of Anarchy. But in a way, I'm sort of. You might hate me for this, but I'm seeing a lot of that in you where you're going, oh, but he never thinks about Nietzsche. Oh, but he never thinks about the space race. He's missing out on this absolute explosion of ideas.
I'll accept that. I'll accept that criticism. But do you not think, though, that the things that I'm interested in, that we're talking about, are more important than Funko Pops? It doesn't need...
To us, yeah.
No, not to us, to anyone. Because
it can't be, remember?
No, because...
Strive for success, Gavin. Not pursuit for superiority.
No, I'm saying that this is one of the last men. Yeah, this character on this meme is the last man. Yeah, this might be the last guy left alive after all the air becomes unbreathable because of the production of Funko Pops. Yeah, they're all linked.
We can't rely on a man with no meaning, though, to be the Ubermensch. So if they have no meaning, and you're saying you have no meaning, then we can't rely on you guys. Sorry, no offense.
But I'm not saying I'm going to have no meaning forever. I've got. No
I do think you have a meaning, but
you're trying to force me to have a meaning now, just like I'm trying to force this guy to have a meaning.
Oh, yeah. Taste of your own medicine. But I know what you mean. And it is frustrating, about the whole vegan thing. I could be offended about that and, everyone should be a vegan, but that's still pursuit of superiority. That's not striving for success. If I'm striving for success, I'll be engaging these people and trying to reach out and searching for mutual ground and explanation.
Joking aside, you are right, man. This is what Bertrand Russell said.
Adler's right. What are you doing, ironing?
Am I ironing?
Yeah.
I wish. I haven't used an iron.
I heard some ironing then.
I can assure you I'm not ironing. Sorry, right. Dad.
I heard some like...
No,
but that's a spicy meme, and I think it is very interesting. I know the frustration we have of other people, and I felt that too. And I felt like, I'm being a bit cruel because I was thinking, I said about people going to have a vaccine and then go and eat 30 hamburgers and then inject vodka into their nose or whatever. That frustrates me too. But I still wouldn't say that these people have no meaning. I think that's a very...
It's quite cruel, isn't it? And it is very...
He has a meaning, but not to us. And if we're going to convince him that a space race is important and that the environment's important, are we going to be able to convince him if we're...
Well, only if we make a Funko Pop that tells him that it's important.
That might be your meaning. Taliban Funko Pops.
Oh, Taliban Funko Pop designer. Yeah, that's my new career.
Islamic State converted Gavin.
We're on dangerous ground here, man.
Yeah.
We better, if we say IS again, that's it. We'll be monitored forever.
Yeah, you're doing a great job, guys. Security services. Make sure you're striving for success, guys. And that's the end of our little battle, our little skirmish today. I'm a bit wounded. Gav?
I'm bleeding profusely from several stab wounds, but I'm going to survive. I do appreciate that you attempted to analyze where I was struggling with meaning. That piece where we said pause, I'm going to go back and listen to that when we finish the edit, because it has made me think about how I need to strive to give myself that productive meaning.
We'll be back, and we're glad you tuned in again. All hail Gavlar's return. And rejoice. Leave some love in the comments.
Leave some
marriage proposals.
Leave whatever you want in the comments, man. Leave a big steaming pile of shit and we'll smear it all over ourselves. Whatever, man. Enjoy.
They like that sort of thing in Germany. Right.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Guten Tag, meine Freund.
Tschüss.
Tschüss.